right, welcome back to another episode of 2X, the podcast where I help you grow your business twice as fast by focusing on very specific and tangible, actionable advice. So let's dive into today's topic of community. I'm by no means a community expert. I've never been a community manager, but I strongly believe that I have a lot of good tips and tricks that I can share around community and community management and how to foster a community, because I'm personally someone who's very passionate about building strong communities. I've been active in many different communities as well, and I've seen some things that work and some that don't. So let's dive into it. Again, I'm just going to speak to the things that I can speak about. So hopefully everything here will be pieces of advice that you can actually use and find meaningful. So number one, obviously, what is a community? Community, I'd say the main difference is it's a bit different compared to an audience, in the sense that if you have an audience, you are usually the leader. You are distributing content, you're giving advice. If you have a community, the connections are decentralized. You can remove the leader. You can have a leader as well in a community, but even if you remove the leader, people will still want to be there, will still want to engage in the community. Why community, especially in a business context? Having a community, number one, I'd say it builds stronger brand loyalty. When you have stronger brand loyalty, obviously you have better retention. Your customers are more willing to stay with you. They believe in you, and they will stay true to you and stick with you even through those tough times as well. The second one is, because they are so sticky, communities in a sense, it will also better protect your business from competition. Because once you have formed a community, people tend to have bonds and relationships between members of the community, and it's much harder for them to move away from your community to transplant themselves into a new community. So understanding that, let's talk about why people join communities. I would say the first thing is people want a sense of belonging. They want to be a part of something that is bigger than themselves. It gives them a sense of purpose. They like to become a part of that movement. So the community fulfills all of that. You have to remember as well, at the end of the day, if you're running a business, your business is often more than just a single product. I'll give you Apple as an example. I mean, obviously they may be the exception, but as an example, Apple is not just the iPhone. Apple has an ecosystem of products. They have the iPhone, iTunes, MacBook, iPad, and it's so much more than that, right? It's a bit about what is Apple trying to accomplish. Apple is about empowering people who are creative, empowering people who want to be different, right? Think different. That's one of their mottos. So at the end of the day, what is that sense of identity, that brand identity, but also that identity that your community will resonate with? So you want to build a community around that sense of identity. People want to be in a community that speaks to and reinforces their personal identity. So yeah, as people get involved, as people move themselves into community and engage, they want to see themselves, they want others to see those qualities in them by association of that community and by association of using your products or services. So now you understand that, obviously, what is a bad community versus what a good community. So a bad community is a community that's really just focused around your brand. You don't want to build a community that is just about your company and your product. Instead, a good community should be around a cause, not just your brand. Yes, your brand can be a part of that cause, can be a leader of the cause, but your goal is to build a community around something that is greater than your business itself. Because as you do that, then as you identify what is that cause, people will associate your brand with what it represents. And by doing so, as people engage with the cause, they will see your company, your products, your services as something that reinforces their personal identity. Because let's say, for example, if someone who is all about diversity and inclusion in sports, what is the brand out there that's well known for that right now? It's Nike, because they were obviously very strongly passionate about that. They've cultivated their stance on certain issues around, Colin Kaepernick, or maybe even Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, who decided to put her career on pause to focus on mental health, right? So if you can associate your brand along these causes. You will build your community around those, and your customers will tend to resonate with that, and they will stand by your community as you demonstrate authentic support of those causes. So as you go about and start to build this community, how do you go about doing it? I would say starting out a community is probably the hardest part. As you start to build a new community, focus more on quality rather than quantity. It's not about having a lot of people in there, but it's more about having good engagement, people who are passionate, people who are what we call advocates, not so much influencers, people who care about the cause. You'll have to do a lot of seeding yourself. And what does seeding mean? You have to post a lot, you have to share lots of ideas, ask questions, tag people who might be able to answer those questions, prompt people to speak on a certain topic, share resources, organize events. Those are all different activities that you can do to get people speaking and kind of building that relationship within the community. Focus more on highlighting your community stories. What happened with an individual? What happened? What are their journeys through success or failures? What did they go through? Don't focus on pitching your product or your brand or your company. Make sense? So as you start to build into that, then you can speak into that from a brand perspective eventually. But your goal now is just to foster that community focus around the cause. Some other tips that I've learned, if you're looking to grow a community organically, especially on Facebook, it's been shown that closed groups tend to have a higher rate of growth, mostly because having a closed group, or an invite-only group, it gives members a sense of exclusivity. So they tend to value being in that community a bit more. And they will actually refer more often as well, because if it's just a public group, people just share the link and sometimes the friend will forget to join. But if it's an invitation, then people will feel like it's more personal. People will tend to join and be more engaged as well. So explore closed groups, explore invite-only type of groups, not just for the sake of exclusivity, but mostly to engage for the sake of building an engaging community and also increasing that referability. Another thing to be mindful about in communities is that not everyone can contribute at the same level that you can, or at the same level that you expect them to. So don't make people feel inadequate because they're not engaging, because they can't dedicate their life to your cause. Instead, recognize all levels of commitment, all levels of engagement. So if people are willing to answer something, acknowledge that. If people share certain tips, acknowledge that. And yeah, just think about focusing on building that quality base before you start to scale up. Don't worry too much about just throwing numbers in there. You don't need a big group to start a good community. How else can you help a community grow? One tip is to give members in the community a sense of recognition and some sort of engagement through their contribution. So you can do so by empowering them. If someone is very actively communicating in your community, maybe if you trust their judgment, you might want to make them a moderator. And in doing so, yes, it also helps you offload some of that work, but it also gives them that sense of recognition and responsibility, and they tend to stick around more and be more engaged as well. Use emotion. So think about how you can find and use not only positive emotions, but even negative ones, as long as they're emotionally arousing. So arousing emotions will tend to increase engagement and increase referability, but you're not doing it purely for the sake of engagement. So you're engaging people around these emotions to help them further their discussion around the cause. Right? Have them share their personal stories. Have them talk about the things that they want to rant about, some of the issues that they've seen related to the cause. So when you have those polarizing discussions, you want to make sure that it's actually pushing the debate in a positive way, that is healthy, that is respectful. You don't want to have community members demeaning each other or jumping to conclusions, making sure that you're sharing the right scientific proven resources as well. Making sure you're sharing vetted content, right? Making sure that is actually credible. Another thing that will help around that emotional element, if you're looking for topics to kind of get people talking about, is identify the common enemy And when I say common enemy here is you're not trying to do competitive bashing. You're not talking about how other companies are not doing it the right way. Instead, you're trying to identify like a higher level, more systemic level enemy. So an example might be, you might say, oh, this is the traditional way of doing things versus we are doing it in a more modern way. Or you might talk about, governments tend to be bureaucratic and we want to push people to be more democratic, right? And you might talk about things like, let's say, big pharma companies, they're all profit driven. We want to focus on improving accessibility to drugs, for example. So think about what that common enemy is and kind of spark the discussion around that. When it comes to visibility and referability, if you make something public, the more public it is, the easier it will be for people to spark kind of a second level discussion on that. And through that second level discussion, more people will get curious about it, and that increases the growth of your community, both through referral, but also through just people looking into it as well. So what do I mean by making something public? There's this great book from Jonah Berger. He talks about Contagious, Why Things Catch On. So it's mostly about how do you design these kind of campaigns to be viral. So definitely look the book up. And one of the tips that he gives is certain behaviors or certain beliefs are private, but how can you manifest that in a public setting? So one example that I can give here is, if you vote, the act of voting is something that is usually not known. It's not public, but because now a lot of places, they give you those I voted stickers, or in some countries where you have to like dip your finger in a certain ink when you vote. And you'll notice people when they vote, they take pictures of that. And that helps communicate that they've done a particular action. And the same principle applies to if you look at why the Ice Bucket Challenge, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge became so popular, is because it manifested the act of donating towards ALS through something that was visible and visceral, right? So make something that is observable by people. So Movember, for example, growing up your mustache for the month of November to support prostate cancer, right? Think about things like that. How can you manifest these thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors publicly so that people can see it in some way? Through it, be it through, let's say, some sort of quality swag or items that they can wear, or maybe some actions that they can do. Other things to think about is same with events as well. Events are transient. What are behavioral residues that you can create so that people will keep thinking and keep talking and keep discussing certain things? So like the, Movember, it's for the whole month of November, right? So how do you get and keep that conversation going for a longer time? So yeah, where do you start if you're thinking about starting a community? On the baseline, online, you can look at Facebook. Facebook groups are pretty good. Discord, Reddit. Again, it really all depends on the type of person who is in your community, who is your audience. In person, you can go after events, meetups, communities like YMCA. Another online or social media one would be Instagram or TikToks. They don't work as well, I would say, because they are not as conducive to discussions. They're more about posting content. So look for platforms or forums, places where you can actually engage more in more detailed discussions. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the tips that I have around building a community.